It's good to see you.
You are Liz and you are back.
I am back, and you are Lisa, and it's so great to see you again.
Good to see you
I've
too.
missed you.
I missed you too. We had a good show last week though that I want to talk about a little bit
Let's
too when we
talk
get
about it.
started. But
Let's talk about it.
what is this podcast?
What is this podcast?
What is this podcast?
Today's podcast is Thoughtful Thursdays. So tell us a little bit what that means to you.
Yeah. So the question that I ask is, do you have thoughts that keep you up at night?
I do.
I do, and you guys are like, it's living proof that this is true because I've been up since 2 a.m.
I think I woke up at about 1:37. Mm-hmm. So it happens.
Yeah, and then I couldn't go back to sleep because of all the thoughts that were racing through my head. And we're going to talk about some of those thoughts because they might be thoughts that you guys have too. But I think what's really interesting is that every thought that you have is based on something you've experienced, a memory, right? Mm-hmm. And so like you're thinking about things that happened. So I know that sounds like a big duh, but when you start unpacking where thoughts come from and then how to get ahead of them so they maybe don't keep you up at night, or if your thoughts are leading you to a source to where you're just feeling majorly confused about things, like this thought just will not go away, and it could be because of a painful experience, right? Or there's this confusion because you are not being told the truth. You know, something that happened, that memory could have been a really confusing situation where you're just trying to figure out what's the truth in this scenario. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I've said it before, but if you think about it, if a thought is based on a lie, and oh, by the way, Sophie's here. She's going to be here with us today. She'll interrupt whenever she feels like it, but that's Sophie. I like to describe lies like a little black round puzzle piece. Doesn't fit anywhere, and you can't do anything with it. But lies are pretty prevalent, right? There's a lot of lies out there, and when we're dealing with that, it leaves us to feel super powerless. What do we do with this? So the missing piece of the puzzle is truth, and that's what we're going to get to.
Does this relate also to those gut feelings that we often have?
Yeah.
Where something is just niggling inside of you. You can't let it go, but society or those around you say, oh, you're just overthinking that, or it's not a big deal. The purpose of what we're going to be discussing today is actually just that, mm-hmm. to really listen to what your body is telling you. Mm-hmm. We as human beings are naturally intuitive to situations that are not accurate, that are not correct, and are not safe for us. Mm-hmm. So when our guts speak to us as individuals, as mothers, as partners, those are intuitions that I know that are beyond what we can explain in a tangible, physical way, as much as listening to ourselves, mm-hmm. listening to our bodies, yep. and allowing that thought process.
Yeah, because thoughts are helpful, right? They always pop into our brain. It's just kind of crazy how much we are thinking about things. And so to be thoughtful and to give, like, let's be curious about that, which, by the way, this is the Why So Curious podcast. We always forget what we're gonna do, where we're gonna start. But so are you curious about why your thoughts keep you up at night? We're gonna talk about that. Yeah. So do you care if I go back real quick? I've shared a few things with you this week.
I'd love it. Please.
That I wanted to address. We had a really cool episode, the What the F Wednesdays with Brianna, and I've gotten some really, really powerful positive feedback, but the feedback kind of leads into today's topic. So I wanted to share something with you guys this morning, somebody's feedback that they gave me that I'm not going to disclose who this person is, and you guys aren't going to be able to figure anything out, but at the same time, I think that it's really important for you guys to hear this, because what Brianna and I talked about that makes me go, what the fried chicken, is the fact that Brianna is a Mace mom. She's a mama bear. She's out there protecting her kids, protecting kids in her community, and she just really is passionate about providing prevention and equipping kids and families with what they need to protect themselves, to get out of situations if they're in them, to avoid a child having to have a horrible memory based on a horrible traumatic experience, right? So now where their thoughts are going to keep them up at night. And it took her years to get into her school. And now that she's in the school, because her hard work paid off, she was sending me screenshots of student responses from some seniors in high school. And she gave a presentation just on how to develop a healthy, safe relationship. We teach kids how to build a friendship cake, and just learning what healthy relationships look like. And these seniors, and I know that when I was a senior, I felt like I knew everything and I was ready to take on the world. But they're babies. They're 17, they're 18 years old. They have their whole life ahead of them. And their responses were, this is good information, but it's too late. We've already experienced trauma. And one of the girls actually wrote, the key is prevention, not intervention. And I was like, girl, you're preaching to the choir, you know, but at the same time, and another kid said the same thing, this is too late. Like, we've already experienced all of this stuff. You've got to get to kids when they're younger. Well, it took years just to get to the kids at that age, right? Because there's this idea, I'm curious as to why people are so hesitant to talk to kids about things that are going to potentially save their life from a horribly traumatic situation.
If we take ourselves out of the situation, and we're not Liz and Lisa for this part of the discussion, multiple parents that I've spoken to about this topic have all said the same thing. I don't want to say the words and put them out into the universe, because if I put them out into the universe, that invites them in. Which I can actually get behind that and understand that. However, to the point of the words of the babes, they are the ones who are telling us we need to hear this sooner and we need to hear this more often. And there's something that we, all of us collectively, the two of us, all of you, really need to start to shift our thought process around, which is the more we discuss things, the more that we make it safe, the more that we make it table topics, for lack of a better description, the more it becomes comfortable and safe, so that we can start teaching younger, start teaching sooner. And it's not even teaching, that's not even the right word.
It's
but
relationship.
It's really being in communication.
Yeah, communication. Good word.
It's so funny. We were talking about this, I think last week, about how when we were kids, trying to have sex education in the classroom in 4th grade was such a big deal. And so many of the kids in my class, at least, had to leave because their parents weren't comfortable with the topic. We're right back there all over again, where, yes, we are talking about what can be considered very sensitive discussions, and we don't know everyone's situation. Let's own that. Nonetheless, not talking about it is only contributing to the problem. It's not helping.
And not talking about it when 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 5 boys will experience sexual abuse before their 18th birthday. If we're not talking about it, those babies are going unseen, unheard, and unprotected. And so we have to get out of our uncomfortable place of like, this is not comfortable for me, and figure out a way to make it common conversations, because we care about our kids. And for those of us, you know, I was the mama bear that was teaching my kids the minute they could understand, even when we weren't communicating verbally yet, how important and beautiful they are as a human being, and every part of them deserves to be protected. And I wanted to teach them how to protect all of the beautiful parts about them, and make it not an uncomfortable conversation, because shame creeps in. And when shame creeps in, we isolate, we shut down, we don't want to talk about it. So again, if you're feeling like, okay, enough, I don't want to listen anymore, it's check that and try to figure out why you might be having that experience. Because if there's shame that you're carrying, it's not yours to carry. That's the most important thing. Is that shame? I refer to them as my shame attendant, and I got that from Dr. Kurt Thompson, where every time I'm like, oh my gosh, you are so stupid, why did you make that choice? It's like, oh, that's my shame attendant sitting on my shoulder telling me how stupid I am, and I have to look at that little attendant and go, shut up. I'm not stupid. That's shame. Simple. I know I've got grandkids. I'm in my 50s. I'm still talking to myself like that. But it helps my thoughts get right back on the right track instead of going down that path. So to speak to that, all of that is to say, I had an individual reach out to me immediately after she saw the comments from the youth. And she said, I agree with these kids. I was 8 years old, and now everything is in all caps. No one told me anything about abuse, respect for myself, and what should never happen. I was alone with no help, absent and cold parents. I'm not going to read the rest because I want to respect her privacy, but she went unseen for so long, and nobody was talking to her. And you know what? She's older than I am, and she still deals with the memories and the thoughts from that trauma. She is walking in a really good place, but our kids are dying to be seen, and they're just done being alone.
Yep.
They just want to know that somebody cares enough to talk to them.
And not only do our kids, so does her kids.
Right.
And his kids.
Right.
And one of the things that I've been honored and privileged to experience is friends of my son's who have over the years reached out and said, hey, Mama, can I talk to you about something I can't talk to somebody else? And to be able to play that role, be that advocate, be that open vessel for that baby who needs to have his or her words heard, validated, acknowledged, just to let it out. And even if it's to help them have that conversation with their parental units,
Yep.
we owe that to our children today, to be open to those conversations and to make sure that when there's an inkling of that topic coming your way, that you stay very calm, very grounded. Make sure that you're opening your body and opening your heart and your mind to them in a way that says, this is safe. You have come to the right place. Continue. Because so often, unfortunately, we hear the other side, which is somebody's body language says, no, I can't handle this. And that child no longer has that voice.
Right. Yeah. And for those of you who have experienced stuff in your past that create those thoughts that you now have from the memories that are keeping you up at night, pay attention to those. Like, all I know is that I am one of those people who my coping mechanism is to numb. So I just really don't, I want to check out because I don't want to think about it. But then I started processing, why am I thinking about this? And what is it about this thought that makes me want to numb? Well, none of us want to experience pain, right? And so, and emotions are very painful. There's those things that we can't put a Band-Aid on, right? And so sometimes those emotions just can really take us to a place where it just hurts. But then what you got to learn is let it hurt. But the hard part about that, which I'm just being really transparent, is that means you need to give yourself permission to grieve. Yes. If you don't grieve, if you don't allow those thoughts and those feelings to come out through grief, it stays with you, and that's why your thoughts are keeping you up at night. So grieving is not an easy thing to do.
No.
And I can promise you that for years, I didn't realize I was choosing not to grieve, but I definitely was like, no, I'm not going to go there, because I know if I start to cry, I'm going to cry for years, and I'm going to be a mess. I'm not going to be able to pick myself back up. I've got to keep surviving. And there's that word.
That's not the word we want to be using here.
That's not the word that I want to be. I don't want to be in survivor mode. It's exhausting. It feels fruitless. It just feels like you're getting through the day. And so thriving is really, really where we want to be. And grieving produces thriving.
Correct.
So, sorry if that doesn't sound really fun to anybody.
You know what, though? I'll tell you, while it is not the same as the topic we're discussing right now, I was putting off grieving something for several weeks. And unbeknownst to me, but seen by those around me, was that Liz went into a deep, dark hole and I wasn't able to function. And I was failing miserably at everything around me. I was making mistakes at work. I was not communicating with my partner. I didn't talk to my child for a week, even though he's at school and he probably doesn't want to talk to his mom all the time. There were little things that were happening that, because I didn't allow myself to go through that process, that was breaking me down. And it took me stepping away from the environment that I was in to be able to go, oh my gosh, I need to go through this. And then through that, sure, it hurts and it's painful. I'm not going to deny that. But what I will say, and what I will give everyone, is that I get to bounce back afterwards. And it's amazing to be able to come back to your core and come back to your being and say, I did that. I got through that.
Yeah.
You'll notice I was very careful not to say I survived that, but I got through that,
Yeah.
which to me is so much more important. To be able to come around the other side and be the little ray of sunshine that I really prefer to be, rather than that little dark storm cloud.
Yeah, but dark storm clouds come, but you just don't want them to stay over you and have power over you to where you don't get to move on and be the ray of sunshine that I think you are too. And again, just going back to we don't really write anything out as to what we're going to prepare for the day. We kind of like to just go with the flow of things. I mean, yes, there's structure to what we do, but for the sake of authenticity, we like that. We're never going to run out of content. There's always going to be something to talk about when it comes to this stuff. So I didn't plan on telling you the story, and all of you the story, about what happened, that transfer that happened with my grandfather. And so the reason I'm telling you this is because I want you to see what it's like to go through the grieving process, because as a result of telling that story, it actually brought up other memories that I had forgotten. And I was invited to a retreat with just a small group of ladies that was to tell your story. And so the person leading it asked us to just write a quick story about one event, and then we were going to tell the story to each other. And because there was more to that story. And when I started unpacking everything and peeling back the layers of the onion, when I was getting ready to read my story, because I had it all typed out, but I hadn't cried. I just did it. And then I'm like, okay, I'll read it. I couldn't read it. I literally could not read it because I could not stop crying, because what I realized was, as I was reading the words, that I had lost a child with my husband that I didn't know that I was carrying at the time, as a result of the cervical cancer. And then my mind went to the memory of the abusive conversation that I had with him, and I had never grieved that child. There was the cancer, there was the family drama. It was just like I was in full-on survivor mode. And so it was the first time, and these women reflected. They were like, "What would you have named her?" And then I'm just like, I forgot that I knew what I would have named a little girl, right? And so it was just, and here's the deal. It took me about an hour to just process everything with these ladies, and I cried my eyes out. And then when it was done, I had a sense of relief that I didn't know that I needed. But it was a memory that was a heavy presence in me. There's more to the story. We're not going to go there. But the point is, it was like, I grieved the loss of a child that I had not grieved for 20 some odd years, and not, given myself permission to acknowledge that happened. And I know so many women who have had miscarriages, and it's so confusing. It is one of the most confusing things that you could ever go through, because sometimes it happens like me and I didn't know I was carrying, but then when it all happened, I knew exactly what was going on. And then I've had miscarriages where, I was anticipating and did know. And it is a very confusing place to be, because the questions come out, well, is it really that big of a deal? Yeah, it is that big of a deal. And so if anybody and you know what, my husband lost that baby too.
Yep.
And so he and I had the chance to talk about it, and we processed things, and it was just like, it has been so helpful to get that heaviness, that weight that's been on me that I didn't know, off. Okay, so that's what grieving looks like, and for somebody who avoided it for so many years, whew, it felt so much better.
What a gift.
Such a gift, which is why we have these conversations.
Absolutely.
Because maybe you don't feel safe having these kind of conversations with people that you know, and since we're just behind a camera, then you can process things with us just on your own time in your own safe place. So yeah, anywho, I want to talk about something else that makes me curious.
Let's talk about it. That's what we're here for.
Okay. I was listening to I don't even remember what I was listening to in the car last night, but with my husband, and somebody was going through some statistics, and the CDC, you guys can all fact check me, I don't care, I'm not going to nail it, I'm sure, but there was a new report that came out on teens, and the person that was talking about this was really upset in a good way. They were genuinely concerned because the idea now is that, well, not the idea, the truth, the reporting is coming out that is saying 30% of our teenage girls have seriously contemplated suicide. Seriously, meaning like they have a plan. Mm-hmm. So I actually think that number's low. Right? And, and as he was reading it, he was trying to unpack why. So he's like dissecting, getting down to these, areas of, and one of the correlating factors that you can see, because if you go back and you look at the research, it's just on an incline to where more and more of our youth are considering suicide and struggle with suicidal thoughts. And did you hear the word thoughts? Right? It's in our head, but it's also super closely related to our hearts, super closely related to our identity. So what are the thoughts that you have about you that are leading you down that path to where you don't believe that you are worth living? Your life is not worth living on this planet. So I was talking back to the radio, even though the guy wasn't there, and I was like, if you sit down and have a conversation with a child, they will tell you why they have those thoughts, right? There's so many other factors that go into the idea of contemplating ending your life. What are your thoughts on that?
Oof, this one touches home for me. Let's just look at the two of us here. Mm-hmm. When I was a teenager, I had 4 serious attempts, not thoughts, attempts. 4. Right? So that's 50% of this party right here, and I'm not going to ask you today. But if I can acknowledge that at least 50% of this party here not only had the thoughts and had the plan, tried to execute, failed miserably, I'm here. It's because, to the whole topic of today, I had those racing thoughts all the time. The thoughts kept me up at night to the point where I wouldn't sleep for days on end. And really the reasons, let's just be honest, the reasons don't matter. The reasons in my mind, they don't matter.
Right.
What does matter is that, unfortunately, at that time in my life, I didn't know how to have a voice and be vocal. I didn't know until the very last attempt, which was the worst, to actually say, I need help.
Yeah.
And so over the years, as I have spoken to my circle and my tribe of women, I can't think of a single one that didn't have thoughts. Now, whether or not they actually did anything against those thoughts, we won't unpack that one today. Right. But my circle is not small. So that 30% number, to me, I challenge that.
Yeah, I do too.
What I would say is 30% are willing to say that they have had thoughts. What about the rest of those young ladies?
Right. So here's just some stats that you probably need to know. So remember earlier I opened up with 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 5 boys, and those numbers fluctuate every now and then, will experience sexual abuse before their 18th birthday. According to research, that very act alone, that trauma that creates a thought based on an experience that somebody went through, they are 3 to 5 times more likely to attempt suicide. Okay, so 30%, no.
No,
And then
not accurate.
the other thing too is sexting and sextortion. By the time our kids are 14 today, 1 in 4 have either sent or received a nude photo of themselves or their peers. And that increases the risk of suicide by 5 times. There's a psychological thing that goes along with it that people are not talking about. And what Brianna and I talked about was the kids say it's normal,
Right.
but it's not normal, and it's doing so much damage to their identity, to who they are, and they don't understand the impact, but they find themselves wanting to commit suicide because they don't want to live with themselves anymore because of the shame. And so you unpack that, it's like, okay, 1 in 4 of our kids have either sent or received a nude photo. And again, we're not focusing on that act, we're focusing on what is that doing to their hearts and their minds and their identity. Okay, because so many kids have not even been told this is not normal and this is not common, right? It's harmful to the mind of a child. And so it's just important that these are just 2 statistics, that lead to suicide. Let's talk about bullying. It's one of the most incredibly rampant issues that kids say our parents have no idea what we are up against day in and day out. And when you pile on the fact that now it's on a screen and it never goes away, they are 11 times more likely to attempt suicide when they're bullied in person and online. Okay, 30%, no. I just don't buy it. No. I mean, okay, way to go CDC, but I don't know who you're interviewing. But if you really want to know why this stuff is happening and why we're at this place that we're at, is because nobody is talking to kids. There is a big wall up. We don't want to have this discussion. It's supposed to happen at home, which I completely agree with. But what if you have moms and dads who have experienced stuff and they don't know how to process their own thoughts?
What if they don't have the tools?
What if they don't have the tools? What if they don't have a safe circle, right? So that's why we're here. All right, let's take a break. Woo!
Deal.
Okay. Hey everybody, I just want to take a second here to acknowledge a couple of our sponsors. First, I want to acknowledge the organization called Power Over Predators. I do happen to be the founder and the executive director, the CEO, whatever you want to call me, but Power Over Predators is a program, it's a tool, it's curriculum, it's video trainings that are there to help protect kids, because Power Over Predators, we aim for a world where kids discover their worth, can find their voice, and then take some pretty bold steps to protect themselves and then to ultimately advocate and protect their peers. It's also an opportunity for parents and communities to be equipped so that they can protect the kids in their community. I mean, it's our future. We've got to protect these kids. So we are completely about ending exploitation of our kids by equipping them with that life-saving information, because I want them to achieve their goals and dreams. Who doesn't want that for their kids? So please, thank you to Power Over Predators for being a sponsor to the Why So Curious podcast.
And how can we find more information on Power Over Predators?
Go to poweroverpredators.org. You can follow us on social media. You can, our website is a wealth of information for you.
We'll see you there.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, everybody, I want to tell you about another one of our sponsors, which is called MACE, and that stands for Mothers Against Child Exploitation. You can be a man against child exploitation. You can be a marsupial against child exploitation. I don't care who you are. What we are looking for, this is a volunteer group. It's a grassroots group of people where the goal is to get 1 million moms to sign up for $12 a year so that seriously we can save the world. Do you know what I can do with that money? I will save so many babies with that money. And so if you're passionate about protecting kids, I need you in the ring, okay? We need some mother fighters right now to help protect our kids, because the numbers are ridiculously scary, and I'm not gonna go into that right now. But I just wanna say thank you to Mace for being a sponsor to the Why So Curious podcast. So if you're curious how to join and become a mother fighter like Liz and I, just head to poweroverpredators.org, hit the Mace link, and all the information that you need is right there. Got any other questions for me?
I think you nailed it.
All right.
Thanks,
everybody.
So you might sit there and be wondering, gosh, ladies, you have told us so much about the problem. We want to always bring to you the solutions.
Yes.
And so, Lisa, what I'd love to be able to transition us to is, how do we find truth in all of this? Because that's really, to use your own words, that's how we land the plane, right?
Yes.
Is in truth.
Yep.
And we talked about my truth. We talked about Lisa's truth. Let's talk a little bit more about how we can help those around us speak and find their truth.
Yeah. So are you ready for hope?
Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, if you need to, take a deep breath, because I'm actually kind of proving the point that lies cause an enormous amount of confusion, and it just feels bigger, and then it feels bigger, and it feels bigger. And we're like, I don't know what to do with this. Let's get down to the truth, right? We're going to find the missing pieces to the puzzle here.
I love it.
What I had to begin to believe for myself, and what you had to begin to believe for yourself, was that your life matters. Your life matters. My life matters. That's the common sense, I know, but the flip side to, why do I not want to live anymore? There's a lie there that is convincing you that something about your life doesn't matter. And our kids are facing that every day, right? Every day. Do I matter? Yes. Oh my gosh, yes, you matter. Which is why on my website, we've put together an entire page full of resources. And then when we go in and we present this material to kids, we empower kids how to be a really great advocate for their friend. Because most of the time, kids are going to disclose hard information to their closest friends. They don't know if they can trust their parents to share where they're at, because they don't want their parents to overreact and freak out, right? And it's not because, they're just confused. They're stuck in lies. And so just the most important thing to do is to, we've already said this before, but be a really, really good listener, right? Just listen. And the thing is don't ask the question, why? Even though we like that question because it piques our curiosity, but sometimes people don't have an answer to why. So you could say, what are some thoughts that you're having that are leading you down this path, right?
How are these things making you feel?
How are these things making you feel? Exactly. And then listen, right? And then the simple things that we do just as truth tellers and as good listeners is we say, I'm sorry that you are feeling this way. It's okay. It's painful, right? But if we acknowledge and we just say, I'm sorry that you are experiencing this. I'm here with you. I'm not going anywhere. We might need to get some help in the situation, right? There's so many different scenarios. We're not going to be able to solve all the world's problems right here and right now. But what I do want to encourage parents, youth, anybody who's listening right now, just the truth is every life matters and has a purpose. Every life can change this world, and nobody is an accident and nobody is a mistake. And I just want everybody to start replacing those lies with that truth. It's a mindset shift, right? We're creating new brain pathways, which is why these conversations are so incredibly important. When you talk about this stuff, you're telling yourself the truth, even though you might not feel it, what you're doing is you're creating new brain pathways. And now your brain is shifting into focusing on truth and thriving instead of being stuck in that rut where the chemicals in our brain release that cause more depression and more stuck feelings and more hopeless feelings. So as simple as it sounds, replacing those lies with the truth is a really great place to start. We just don't know that. We feel stuck and we don't know it. So that's one of those places that we go.
But not only that, that really ties back to what we were saying, I think 2 episodes ago, which is that our minds don't believe something. We don't believe something until we experience.
Right.
So parents, adults, children, whomever you are out there listening, this is where you have that opportunity to either help someone experience it so they feel and believe the truth. Or yourself, you will go through that experience of feeling, believing, and understanding the truth.
And some of you have only experienced pain, and so it's really hard for you to believe us today, and I completely understand, and I have been there before, which is why we landed in the places that we landed ourselves personally, because of the experiences. So what I hope that you can experience is just hearing the truth for the first time and knowing that your life has a purpose and that you matter, and I don't say that flippantly, okay, because I have children and I have grandchildren, and it is a passionate, burning love for life and love for people and love for just the human being, whoever they are. But I really just want to encourage you to talk to somebody. I'm going to be brutally honest. I really have a hard time recommending calling the suicide hotline because they're so overwhelmed with phone calls that sometimes people are sitting there for 30 minutes. But if that's the only thing that you can do, and you don't feel safe talking to somebody that you know, I definitely just encourage you to go ahead and reach out to the suicide prevention hotline. And on my website is where you can go to find all of this information. But you're the author of your story, right? This is your story, this is your life, and this is your opportunity to be the author of your story, and start having this conversation, and just find somebody who will listen to you. There are people that will listen to you. We will listen to you. So when it comes to just the different places that people might feel like they need to go, like the things that we talked about earlier, and again, I don't want to go with the bad news, but you do need to be aware, is that one of the statistics that I've left out of the first half was suicide today is the second leading cause of death for our kids. Yikes. Ages 10 years old to 25. Okay, and they're getting younger. And so how do we stop this, right? Where is the hope? The number one is accidents. So if you were wondering, but that just, for me, that just puts a passion and a fire in my belly to again, have these conversations, speak truth, bring people into a conversation where we can talk about what we're feeling, what we're thinking, what we're going through, so that we can get out of that cycle. But some of the things that are really also causing a lot of depression and anxiety for our kids is, I don't have it on my website right now, and it's because it's something that I've experienced with one of my kids, is it's actually sleep deprivation. So again, I'm not dogging phones, and I'm not dogging TVs, and I'm not dogging gaming. What I'm saying is the fact that our kids are not getting the sleep that they need because of how much time they spend on the screens, or even if their phone is plugged in their room, which I highly recommend not having your phone in your room when you're trying to sleep, not having the television on when you're trying to sleep. You know, a lot of our kids just aren't sleeping because they're glued to their devices. But it's weird that people don't even, there's a lot of research, and we can unpack that one day in another podcast, but really get in tune with whether or not you or your kids are getting good sleep, because honestly, sleep deprivation is a real thing. It is an actual torture technique that people use to torture people with, because it makes you go crazy, and it causes depression, and it causes suicidal thoughts. So it's a real thing. So pay attention to your screen time, where your screens are at, and then just for yourself personally, just practice plugging in your phone somewhere else. And I know we're like, but what if somebody calls in the middle of the night? I get it. It's just got to work for you, but it is something that you need to be aware of. So sleep deprivation is real, and we will unpack that in another podcast one day. But I do just want you guys to be aware of that right now. Also, how we eat, the nutrition. Oh my gosh, our bodies. Our body keeps the score, right? I don't know if you've read that book, but I love that book, Bessel van der Kolk. I probably said it wrong. Such an incredible book, such a good read. Our body does keep the score. And if our mind isn't healthy, if our body isn't healthy, our body is telling us through depression, through anxiety, through migraines, through all of this stuff. So we just want to, at least kind of watch what we're eating when it comes to especially our kids. just how we eat can play a huge role in our sleep methods and in everything else that we're talking about here. But last but not least, body image. That's huge, right? And it's a big deal for men. It's a big deal for women. It's one of those things. And so if our body image is where we're placing our identity, which is two different things, right? What do you think the difference between your identity and your body image is? Like you personally, how would you?
Personally?
Yeah.
I mean, this is one I struggle with, right? So as an adult, I've really had to be able to say, this is just a shell. This is what matters.
Right.
This is what matters.
Right.
But I can acknowledge that it took me years to get there. I'm an adult. I've had 40 plus years to be able to go through that thought process. I'll tell you what, at 14, my shell was all I knew.
And our shell is all we're seeing on Instagram, and our shell is all we're seeing on social media, and our shell. So, but
Which is modified, by the way.
Right?
It is not real. It is not real.
I don't wake up looking like this.
There is so
There's
much
a
effort
lot
that
of work
goes into
here,
this.
people.
So much work.
Because I'll be honest, I'm not ever going to come on this show without makeup on. But that's only for my husband to see. But the point is that what we are focusing our attention on, what are we attuned to? Last week we talked about our kids, as soon as they are born, they can pick up when we are attuned to each other. What are we paying attention to? Am I paying attention to you, Liz? Or am I paying attention to my emails and what's happening on my threads, right? So many of us today are struggling with our attention being on the visual stimulation that is coming at us all of the time. And so if that's where we find our identity, instead of where we're comparing our identity to our image or the images that we see, then that really causes a ton of confusion. Again, we're back to that word, confusion, right? And so paying close attention to how much time we spend and how much time we're comparing our life to the lives of people that we see online, and just recognizing that that's where our kids are at today. They are looking for connection and they're finding it, but it's not real. That's the other thing, is it's not real connection. And it's really hard for our kids to make that separation because they are having a chemical experience in their brain. They are actually feeling connected. It is producing happy thoughts, but at the same time, it's producing a ton of negativity. So we just have to be okay with who we are and not let our shell be our identity. So there's two different, like image and identity are very different things. So is there anything else that I'm forgetting? Like if you were a mom or just a person listening, do you have a question? Like, is there something else that you, like, have we missed something?
I don't think we have. I mean, you've really put together the pyramid, for lack of a better term, that helps us understand the psychology that is going on in the minds of our littles and our mids. And so I think that as parents and as concerned adults, a lot of these we say to ourselves as, and even in my mind as we're talking about it, I know that. Knowing it and practicing it are two extremely different things. And I really want to implore each of you as you're listening to us, try not to have that thought of, I already know that, and as you're writing something down or looking at your phone, which again feeds into everything we've talked about today. Yeah. Really take a moment and pause with each of the items that Lisa has mentioned today. Think about you and your relationship as an adult with those things, because not only are we responsible for demonstrating the healthy habits around each of these things, but also being able to acknowledge with our littles and our mids, I noticed that,
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? And one of the things that we talked about a couple of episodes ago, when we were focusing on some of these more challenging conversations, is parents and concerned adults that are out there with us today, recognize that our kids are not going to immediately want to speak about these things with us.
Yeah.
We're going to have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable during these conversations. sometimes we'll have to sit silently with them and allow them to process what it is that we're talking to them about, and actually have those little triggers in their mind say, wait a minute, they're inviting me in to conversation. They want to talk about this, and that will take a moment or two in their minds. They may be experiencing this with you for the first time, so be okay with that silence. Instead of saying, okay, do you have any questions? No? Okay, great. Because we all do that as human beings, whether it's in a meeting at work, when we're talking to our friends, our partners, our loved ones. Be comfortable with saying, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah. So, Jonathan, you have a question. Go ahead.
I do. I actually have a comment.
Okay.
The best thing that I heard for how to talk to students and how to talk to people, instead of saying, what's wrong? What's wrong with you? What's wrong? What's wrong? Saying, what happened to you versus what's wrong with you? Because then it opens up conversation. It's not saying whatever happened to you is something that it makes you internally wrong, right?
Yep.
And I think that's the best way for talking to anybody about anything. It's like, hey, what happened?
Yeah.
And I think that goes off of what you were saying, right? Like, how can I meet you where you're at versus saying whatever happened to you is what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's not talking into a microphone, and if you need to turn up the volume, rewind, turn up the volume, and listen to what he just shared. I think that we did start, maybe in our first episode, we did bring that up, but it's an incredibly good point to bring up again. And here's why we don't want to say what's wrong. Because it is immediately internalized as, so there is something wrong with me. Correct. And they already feel like there's something wrong. So you're just affirming, and they don't know what's wrong because they don't want to feel that way. None of us want to feel that way. Right. And so it's like, what happened, or what are the thoughts and the feelings that you're experiencing that are making you feel so hopeless right now? Again, we're being emotional because emotions are part of our bodies and who we are as people. Deal with it, right?
Well, and going along the same lines of what Jonathan just mentioned, I know as a parent, I've had to be very, very intentional with my language with my son, rather than saying your PTSD, because all of a sudden that labels him.
Yep.
Saying the PTSD you're experiencing.
Yep.
And so it's something that I really want to, again, encourage each of us as we're having our conversations. It's okay for us to pause and be quiet for a moment as we figure out the right way to ask our questions as well. As parents and as concerned adults, we love these kids so, so much. That love can be super overwhelming if it's not delivered in a way that that child is ready to hear it.
Right.
So again, take notes. Write down these little tidbits and nuggets that we're sharing with you, so that when it is your turn and you have the opportunity to invite that child in with you on that journey, which may not be easy, that you're inviting them in such a way that they go hand in hand with you.
Okay, so we are going to land the plane on the happiest place that we can be, because this is going to be the most easy, tangible takeaway that you can have for this. Because when I heard it for the first time, I'm like, you mean I probably didn't need all those years of therapy if I had just known this? So somebody that I'll actually give you guys the link where you can go listen to the video when he says it, but he was a presenter at one of my conferences, and he said the most powerful healing begins in healthy relationships, because we were born to be in relationship with each other. Now, what's scary about that is many of us have not experienced healthy relationships. So you're like, but think about it. If you haven't experienced one, you get the opportunity to try, right? So you want to find those people, those safe people, those people that you can trust. And that's a big ask, right? Sometimes that's a really scary place to be. But I'll tell you what, I didn't know all those 5 ladies that I was in a room with when I shared that story, but the healing that I got and the safety of that room and the safety of those relationships was mind-blowing. And we have conversations that are mind-blowing where we're just like, woo, so and I have that with my husband, and I have that with my kids. And so, but I am so intentional. It's kind of annoying how intentional I am about just the relationship piece, because it's who we are. It's why we were born. We were born to be in relationship with each other, and that is where the healing starts. So take hope. There's nothing wrong with you. It's about finding people that you can connect to, and it can just be one. You don't need millions of friends. All of those people that are following you online,
They don't
how
know
safe
you.
are they? How safe are you with them, right? You need to find one person that you can be in a relationship with who's going to stay in the room with you, who is not going to need to fix you. It's available, it's there for you. And again, I'm going to repeat it. The most powerful place for healing to begin is in a safe, healthy relationship. So there.
I love it. So with that, again, we always encourage you, if you have a story or if you have a thought or if you have feedback or you just want to say hi, we like it when you say hi.
We do.
Please reach out to us at podcastwhysocurious@gmail.com. I promise you we read your messages. And if you give us permission in your note to share it here with our audience, we would be delighted to do so. And even one step further, if you want to join us, let us know. We'd love to have you.
We would love to have you because we do see you. We do know that people are experiencing a lot of the stuff that you and I have experienced, but you haven't experienced the opportunity to tell your story and step into your own story so that you're the author of your story. But we appreciate you, and we hope that you have an awesome rest of your week.